I like the one. Don't forget your DM.
Of course you do. Don't forget your DM needs to have fun too, guys.
We'll roll a die. Pick one. How many?
We can do that one. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Don't forget about all the work that the DM does, guys. Tonight we talk about DM love.
You should have totally some Barry White.
Let's get it on with some DM love.
Oh, yeah.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Down Roll here on Wicked Studios LLC, Twitch, and Mr. Adam PL YouTube, and Facebook. It's a bunch of places in Facebook. And anyway, I'm Adam, this is Will DM, and today, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the DM needs to have fun too, guys. Don't forget all the work that the DM does.
When you say it down like that, it makes it sound like somebody's whining.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the DM.
The DM.
And why the DM needs to have fun too. And I think the answer is pretty obvious, because otherwise he or she won't DM and you've got no game.
That's right. Or they become vindictive. That happens.
I think I would take vindictive over just stopping playing the game.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes. I mean, everybody's probably had people. I don't know. I guess newer people might not have experienced this, but over in the years, I've had people just get up and leave and quit playing. Not when I was running. I've never had that personally.
I've thought about doing it,
but I've been. Well, of course you have. But I've had it in groups that I've been in where they've done that.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought the game Dungeons and Dragons, or role-playing games in general, I thought they were all about the players and making sure the players have fun.
That is a very well, it's true.
All right,
but it's
good.
not.
So you guys treat your DM like shit.
But it's not 100% true, because and a lot of people, I think they tend to forget this. And we were talking a little bit before we went live about this. When you go out, like if you go and you go to YouTube, or you go and you Google Dungeons and Dragons stuff, and you start looking at things that are on the internet, it's all how to customize your characters, how to better role play it, how the DM can DM better, and it's all from the point of view or the perspective of the DM has to do all the work, and that's a really common myth. In role playing is that, well, the DM does it all, and if nothing goes right, then it's the DM's fault.
When I Google role play, a lot of sites come up before Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, that's because your computer has
memory.
The
browser history.
Yeah, it's the browser history bringing up what it thinks you want.
Oh, got it. It truly is a brave new world.
In the nuns have it, though. I'm just gonna say. But
thank you.
Yeah, but it's very true that you don't really see that out there, and essentially, there's not an awful lot of DM love that's out on the internet or in different places. And I think what it does falsely is it gives players a very wrong impression of it's all up to the DM. Now, I'm not saying the DM doesn't have a hugely important job when it comes to the game. He does, because without him, if he sucks, well, then the entire thing sucks, and everybody has a bad time. But even the best DM can have a bad game if the players aren't on board and buying into it just as much as the dungeon master is.
So how do DMs have fun while playing Dungeons and Dragons? And this wasn't a question we had established previously, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, what does fun mean to a DM? versus a player? Because I think the players is pretty easy, right? They get to be the hero of the story. They get to, kill the dragon, and they're the main characters. They're the actors on set.
Right, and the dungeon master is the director,
Right.
and we use movies as an analogy because that's probably the easiest one.
And we like to dumb things down for our audience, is what you're saying.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And
just making sure.
Or you could just be dumb to start with, and the audience automatically connects with you.
That's why you guys are watching. Hi, guys.
but for a dungeon master, now the dungeon master's main job is to either take the prefabbed story and bring it to life, or and it's actually extremely common. A lot of people don't realize just how common it is for homebrew worlds or homebrew.
Sure. All I played for years. I never played a pre-gen adventure until I started playing 5e.
Yeah, and even when I have to say, the bulk of my playing, when you were bringing in modules and things along these lines, they were integrated into the game.
Did you answer the question about how?
No, but I'm getting into that right now. So basically, a DM has fun when their fun comes connected from their stories, their plot lines, their NPCs, and they're helping to bring about a character's background in a satisfying way for both them and the characters. Now, the DM is coming up with all of these things. For example, you often hear about West Marches is a real popular way of playing nowadays, which is another way of saying like sandbox, although it's a drop in, drop out kind of version. And then you got sandbox, which in sandbox is basically you give the players carte blanche. They can go do whatever the hell they damn want. But even with that, a DM has to have preparation. They have to have some things ready they can totally throw at them. I mean, really good DMs can do a lot of stuff off the cuff, which is great. But that will only get you so far, and you will always have elements of story or NPCs that the DM is devising creeping into even those when you're doing something that's off the cuff. So that's how a DM has fun. The DM enjoys seeing the players play through his storyline,
ruin the story.
And this is going into right here. This is like one of the main things. A lot of people are going to say, well, that's the DM's job to be, because you can never be prepared for what your players are going to do. But at the same time, players kind of have an obligation to an extent to kind of give a wink and a nod towards the DM or towards the storyline. There's the term railroading that's used often. And that's when a character wants to do something and then is forbade from doing it. And if it's done repeatedly, that's railroading. Now, if it's done every once in a while, that's not really railroading. That's more of a steering or directing someone towards some different things. But sometimes it is so obvious of a direction and where someone's supposed to. Let's just say, for example, there's a quest for 3 parts of a mythical sword that have to be put together, extremely stereotypical, so forth and so on. The party goes through and puts together and finds 2 parts of the sword and then kind of fucks off and doesn't care about the 3rd part. Now, your poor DM is putting stuff together for that 3rd part of the story. Now there's a number of different reasons why characters might do something, or players, I should say, might do something like that. But you have to keep that in mind when you're doing certain things.
Now, is that how a player would ruin a game for a DM?
Well, yes,
how would a player ruin a game for the DM?
Well, I don't think that there are players out there that
can ruin the enjoyment. How about that?
Ruin the enjoyment or ruin. Say, for example, there's a character that didn't get to do something that they wanted to do. So because of this, what they do next is everything contrary to what the setup is. Like, say, for example, they're supposed to meet somebody at a specific location, and it's in the forest, and they get to this location, they hear a rustle in the woods and a dark figure in the woods, and the ranger, who's just been pissed off for no reason, goes, well, I'm shooting arrows in there because you never know who it might be, knowing full well they came here to meet somebody. It's something along those lines where it's a purposeful action to
derail the story.
Yeah, exactly. And it's real obvious which way something's going to go. Now, it's a balance. Should a DM keep things from happening? I don't think so. I think a DM should let it ride and then let the players have the consequences of the actions. That's one thing that they don't really realize a lot of times when they're in the middle of it.
Actions but at the don't have consequences. That's why you do things without thinking about them. Isn't that true?
Well, no. But, and then, so, like, it's also, players know what's going on in the game. Mm-hmm. They have a general understanding.
Sure.
And when they start doing different things that are contrary to, and it's not even just the DM that's going to suffer from that. It's possible the rest of the players might suffer from that too, because it could, derail something that they've been working so hard at or trying to achieve and things along those lines.
Well, isn't it the DM's job just to tailor the game to the characters?
Yes and no. It's both people's jobs, both groups' jobs to do that. Let's say, for example, if you've got a DM that loves aspects of sci-fi, and you just got a party that doesn't, hates it. Well, then, there could be a compromise there, or they both would agree that we're not going to do that. But at the same time, if the players know that the DM really likes it, and they say, all right, well, if you really want to put it in there because you enjoy running that sort of stuff, can we keep it to a minimum level? And, maybe not perfilate the world with it, but like say in Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, there's a lot of technology and different stuff that's in that game, but it's in one location and it's got a time limit on it. There's batteries that wear out and things along these lines. So it could be sort of like a little give and take. Throw the DM a bone, let him run a little something that he wants, and then the DM has to keep in mind what the players like as well when doing that. But the players also have to be the ones that kind of give a little bit as well to the DM.
Sounds like a lot of work.
Exactly. Now there's a come on. You've DM'd like what, twice?
I DM'd for every Friday for about maybe it was over 6 months, 8 months, maybe.
There you go, man. Just do that for 20 some odd more years, and you'll be up here.
I DM'd two holiday episodes here on Twitch.
Yeah. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. Well, take, for example, your holiday special. Mm-hmm. It was really intricate part of the storyline that people went through a portal.
Right.
Now, if everybody went, fuck that, we don't know where that shit's going, we're not going to go.
That's why I had numerous ways of getting you to where I wanted you to be.
See, that's called the subtle railroad.
Yeah, exactly. You could think that you were doing something, but there are only so many things to try.
But that's where the players come in, and they know, hey, we're playing this game. It's going to be for a limited amount of time anyway, and so we know this is, Adam's kind of pointing at this is the way to go. Let's, for the sake of story, let's go through this. Let's do this.
So how can the players help the DM have more fun?
By buying into some of the things that he does. AKA, you can tell generally when your DM enjoys certain NPCs and bringing them to life. Do him a favor.
So he shouldn't just murder every NPC.
Yeah, I was just going to say, don't kill those guys. Now, there might be some that are bad guys that are designed to be, they're going to be killed. But, it's certain NPCs might be, and they might, and see, that's the thing about DMing is that the NPC that you choose to be intricate, you might not know, but the DM starts dropping some hints, and hopefully the players pick up on them.
Have you ever had an NPC that you didn't think was going to be a big part of the story that turned into something that you weren't expecting?
Yes. Well, I'll give you a good example. In Bandits, there was Hardchuck. Everybody remembers Hardchuck. He was the half-orc bard.
Yeah, he sort of talked like Foghorn Leghorn, right?
That's exactly it. That was him. Now, Hardchuck was actually originally designed to be like a mole for the players. He was somebody who had more freedom of movement in certain areas and certain circles that the characters just didn't have access to. But you know, when treated like a slave, he turned into
a bad guy.
He turned into a bad guy, you know, and that was the consequences of the actions.
Michael's character really treated him poorly.
Yes, but then everybody else. There was only really one. There was really only one person that didn't.
Well, that was Steve's character, who really just didn't have anything to do with him.
Yeah.
So no one was really nice to him.
Nobody was really nice to him at all.
And then the other three were jerks, and one ignored him.
There you go. There you go. And that's the thing. It's like you have to remember that when a DM is bringing something and putting it onto the stage, it generally has a purpose. Even when you're doing something that is, off the cuff, or your DM is improving. When they set the stage, they're setting it for a reason. You know, it might not.
Now, what's more fun though? For example, in Bandits, if we just befriended Hardchuck, used him as a mole, or have him turn into a villain.
Well, turning him into a villain was basically the repercussions of the actions that were happening.
So what would it, if you had your preference, would you have preferred that we followed the script, or was it more fun to go off script in that scenario?
That's a damn good question. And it's hard to give you a 100% answer to it, because the fact that I don't know what would have been role played if Hardchuck would have been brought into Confident.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hardchuck was one that could definitely have progressed the story further in the location where you guys were at, because you guys were kind of behind the eight ball a little bit. So help was given to you, and then help was destroyed. So it kind of ended, you know, basically a lot of what was going on in a particular area, and then the campaign moved away from that. Mm-hmm. So just be mindful that now, is the DM going to throw stuff out there for you that is basically could have Hardchuck been a villain from the beginning, a turncoat that was going to go against the players? Of course he could have. And the players could have 100% been, thinking that. But at the same time, you know, if everyone you see that comes up to you is a backstabber and you treat them as such, well, then you're going to lose a lot from the game, you know. And like I say, the DM puts it out there for a reason. So it's best to try to find out what that reason is before you push them off a cliff or blow something up, or, you know what I'm saying?
I suppose. So now, which is more important?
Enjoyed picking on him.
I did. Actually, interestingly enough, look at the shirt that I'm wearing today.
What? Where did you get that?
Silver.
I don't even remember that.
I had it made a while before he died.
Oh, that's badass. I don't remember you ever seeing you wear that.
Yeah, I did. You just don't remember it because you're old and your memory doesn't work anymore.
Amen to that.
So what's more important? The players having fun or the DM having fun?
That's actually a trick question.
It is a trick question.
They should both be having fun.
Right.
If one side has more fun than the other, then the game suffers and ultimately will fall apart.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, too, that people don't actually realize, is that if you're not taking your Dungeon Master into consideration when you're playing, you're going to burn out your DM.
Yeah. Obviously, that's what happened to me when I was, because I was DMing for this group online that I found. We did, the basis of it was that Baldur's Gate one. I forget what it is. The Murder in Baldur's Gate or something along those lines.
Yeah.
When they first created 5e, they came out with that. It was like D&D Next still, I think, at that point.
Yes, you're
so
correct.
Sort of used that as the basis, and but it's supposed to be like what, one session, maybe 3 tops. We played it for almost 8 months,
right?
And I had other things that I had wanted them to do and to go, but they couldn't figure out anything,
right?
And that's not that complex,
right,
of a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the 3, there's like 3 NPCs. One of the three are the villains.
Right. Now, I'll take the turn and ask you a question at this point. So, what do you think, being the DM, you could have done to help bring them back online?
They enjoyed it this way. That's why I just let them do it. Right, they thought it was great. They were sad when I stopped playing.
Right. And the reason you stopped is because you got burned out.
I got burned out, yeah.
Mm-hmm. See? That's why a little bit of this stuff in either way can go a long way. And you have to...
But because I think part of the reason, I'm going to say why I got burned out, because I didn't think about this until now, but it's because I felt like I was the only one doing anything.
Yes.
Like, if it wasn't for me, there would be no story. And I think that there's that give and take between the DM and the players.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And it was just, here are a bunch of people doing stuff for no rhyme or reason, And I mean, there was literally an entire session where somebody cast water breathing. I don't know I forget what they were searching for, but they decided to search for it in like the marina, and there was nothing there. But
they just kept doing it.
Yeah. And
even the DM going, "There's nothing here," and he go,
"No, really? Yeah, no." It got to the point, like, no joke, guys. Like, you're not gonna find anything.
Right.
And they spent an entire session.
And see, that's underwater. A really good example of what I'm talking about. And also, too, let me give another example here. So, like I say, sandboxes are in a sandbox. It is even doubling more on the players to be an active participant, along with the DM in constructing things. A DM should never have to, if you take your party, chuck them into a tavern with no idea of what's going to happen. And you might have a couple of NPCs with just like your stereotypical like video game quest. You got to go and talk to everybody, and then somebody maybe will give you something for a quest. If the DM were to take his party, throw them into the tavern, the game shouldn't grind to a halt unless the DM makes it continue to progress.
And that's what was happening. So I think like sort of that give and take, everyone should be involved in making the story move forward.
Correct.
In their way. And the DM is not the only one who has control over that.
Correct. And this is something that I think the whole reason that I wanted to talk on this topic is because when you go onto the internet and you go and you look, topics like this are very, very rare. It's like, hey, here's some DM tips on how to do this better. And then basically every time that well, I shouldn't say every time because but the bulk of them all are assuming that you have a group of just spectacular players that will go along with things, or how to deal with a troubled player and so forth and so on. But there's no one talking about, the closest you hear about it is the social contract. Have you heard about that? Where they talk about the social contract between the players and the dungeon.
I've heard it been used, but I don't know. I don't obviously follow contracts or rules of any kind.
Yeah, because you're a rebel.
Those are your rules, man, not mine.
But that's what the social contract is talking about. It's talking about everyone who sits down at the table to game has somewhat of an obligation towards everyone else at the table. Because everyone else at the table is playing a part. Right. And this goes to even when, let's say, for example, if you're taking time on backgrounds or bringing some characters' backgrounds to light, other players shouldn't poo-poo on other players' backgrounds because they don't want to be bothered with that. Buy into it.
I literally tied in everybody's background to the story in different ways. And they didn't even latch on to their own background.
You had one bad group.
Like they were just, it was like, they were just along for the ride.
Yeah. And see that what ended up happening is generally what will end up happening. The Dungeon Master will get burned out on it, and he'll want to go and find different players that have more of a buy-in to the game as a whole.
Yeah. So, for people who are just starting, They don't know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing games in general. How do you decide who the dungeon master is?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is tough, but this is a real life scenario.
Yeah. To tell you the truth, if excuse me, if you're friends, generally one person's gonna come to the forefront as wanting to be the DM.
It's generally the person who wants to play Dungeons and Dragons.
More so in the olden days, back in the day when the Grognard was around. But like nowadays, with it being so prevalent and so many people interested in playing, you can get groups of people together that are looking to play, and you might have 5 people like, man, we all want to play D&D. None of us know how to do it. Who's going to be the DM? If you don't have one person that rises to the top that is more interested in doing it, because there generally going to be one. But if there isn't, I say everybody takes a turn. Everybody takes a turn. Everybody make a character, and then everybody take a turn at running the game. And then it should naturally come out who's better suited for it. If it doesn't work, then maybe you got to go out and find a DM and bring them in. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, and there's plenty of ways to find DMs.
That's what happened with that other group. They found me.
Right? And then they're like, haha, sucker.
I said, I'll do it. I've never DM'd before. I'll take on you, lonely band of misfits.
I'm going to sour you in the game for life.
Like I said, they enjoyed it. I'm very entertaining. But that's all I felt like I was doing was entertaining them for 3 or 4 hours.
And that's exactly the big thing that I'm talking about. If the players aren't buying in, it's not always either, but if the players don't buy into to a degree, the DM just doesn't have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and it's not even buying in. It's just play the character. Like, don't just, and there's too many people who were just, okay, well, I guess I'll, like there was no one would lead the group. There was finally one person who led the group who actually was, if that person wasn't there, it would have crashed and burned a lot sooner.
Right.
But you can't have one player and then, and there was this was a fairly big group, whittled down over time, but you can't have like one player doing everything and then the other 4 just following in the background, waiting for a fight, especially for a module like that. I had to add in a whole bunch of things to fight because there's not a lot of things to fight in that module.
Yeah. And believe it or not, they actually used to try that in not original D&D, but the basic D&Ds that came later. You had, well, it might have been in OD&D too, but I know for sure it was in some of that basic D&D. They had essentially the caller, which it was their job to collect everybody else's, all the players, what they were doing, and then present it to the dungeon master. And then the dungeon master would tell them what was going on. And then, nobody ended up really using it. And the only time I say terrible. And the only time it was, you got to remember too, earlier groups, they didn't really realize where the sweet spot was for how big your group would be until much later. And so they would run groups, especially when they would go and do tournaments and stuff like that. You got 20 people sitting at a table. That's when I played in
my freshman year of college. We had a lot of people on our floor that wanted to play, and there was one DM who was my roommate. Right. His name was Rich. And I mean, there had to have been 12 to 15 players.
Right.
It was, he did a good job keeping everybody engaged too, I'll say.
Right.
So anyway, what's your favorite thing about being a DM? Will DM?
My favorite thing about being a DM is when something that's been laying around or a story element comes to the forefront and the players weren't expecting it. They weren't like, oh, hey, that's where it is. We'll give a small example. When you guys went into Dunwater, it shouldn't have really been too much of a surprise, but you went into the throne room and then put into the decoration of the throne was one of the orbs.
I thought that was a very big surprise.
Yeah, and most of the guys are, oh, there's one of those orbs, and everybody's like, hey, So that's I love doing that. I love that. To me is the best part of DMing. I enjoy bringing characters to life. and how the players interact with them, but being able to surprise in a good way, the players, and they're happy for the surprise. That's the best. It doesn't get any better than that for me.
So what do you prefer, DMing or playing?
Whew, it's hard. When I'm DMing a lot, I'll basically say playing. But like when all I'm doing is playing, I'm not DMing, then I'll say DMing. So I know it's a really pogue way of doing it, but I like both of them equally. Especially with with a really good group, DMing is really, really fulfilling, extremely fulfilling. It's like it just says it's really good stuff. You get more of those moments where everything just kind of coalesces perfectly. When you're a player, they're just not as many because you're not dealing with as many.
Mm-hmm.
So
who's a better group to DM for, Greyhawk Adventures or Tales of a Savage Land?
Oh, Tales for a Savage Land.
No. Oh, boo, boo! All right, we're ending this now.
What I should say is Windy City Kindred, because all I do is produce that.
Yeah, you don't do anything.
I don't do anything for that.
Click go live.
Yep, and then I just monitor stuff, switch some pages, do some things like that.
All right, so anyway, folks, tell us, do you like being a DM? Do you love being a DM? Do you fucking hate it, man, but you're the only one who can do it? Have you never DM'd?
And do you have examples of what it is that makes you happy as a DM?
Are you happy when you know it? Roll some dice.
And how your players can interact with you better to make your job as a DM all that better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, for Will DM, I'm Adam. That is another episode of The Down Roll. We will see you next time where we talk about something other than this.
Definitely something. Good time.
Go do something else with your lives.
Yeah. Go play a role-playing game.
Yeah, or not.
Or not.
We're not here to tell you what we did. I mean, it's none of our business what you're doing right now.
It's not, but I'm telling them.
I know. You really have to stop doing that. This is the DM in you coming out.
It is. Totally is. I'm terrible.
Do what you want to do, man.
Yeah.
Live your life.
Yeah.
And on that note, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.